Welcome to Tips from Trestle. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and leadership. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. As a 25-year veteran of the hospitality industry, I've focused my work on creating exceptional experiences for the customers we serve. My goal for this podcast? Educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living to bring food and hospitality to the front of mind in our industry. Let's bring the innovative and passionate spirit of hospitality to everything that we do for the residents, families, guests, and employees we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, I'm joined by Harris Ader. Harris has more than 20 years of operational experience in the senior living industry. His extensive background also includes experience in contract food service management, the National School Lunch Program, hotels, and restaurants. Prior to founding the Senior Dining Association, Harris was the Vice President of Dining Service at Senior Living Communities based in Charlotte, North Carolina. His areas of expertise include conceptual development, financial and business acumen, organizational effectiveness, project management, talent development, and strategic vision and planning. Harris graduated from Johnson & Wales University. So, Harris, welcome to Tips from Trestle.
Thank you for having me, Aaron. Appreciate being here.
Absolutely. So, we've known each other for quite some time now, and so I'm glad we're finally able to make this happen. I'd love for you to start by telling us how you got into senior living. I mean, when I read your bio, food service management contracts and National School Lunch Program, hotels and restaurants, clearly it's not where you started. So how did you wind up in senior living? Give us your story.
Over 20 years ago, I was in the hotel industry then, and my best friend's father gave me a call. It was right after Valentine's Day, and he needed help in his CCRC. He had a large CCRC on the west coast of Florida. He was building one on the east coast of Florida, and he owned also an assisted living. And I'd never been to any of his communities. And he called me. He said, "I need help in Naples. I lost my director. I don't have a chef. Why don't you come out and check out the place? Tell me what you think, and we'll go from there." So I'm like, let's go for a drive.
Okay.
And my expectations on that drive, as we pulled up to Naples and we saw the large, gorgeous building, you walk in, it was marble. It was a gorgeous, independent and assisted living.
Yeah.
High scale to the T's. It was gorgeous. And ended up being, after that visit, my first start in senior living. I was floored with the gorgeous silverware, the kitchen, what they were serving. I had in my mind when I was going to that place, I'm going to see mashed potatoes and everything else that's pureed and scooped on a plate. But I didn't. I saw something else. I fell in something else that just opened the doors to my career and to where I am now.
It's funny you bring up potatoes because I have asked this question a few times and I always get I had the thought of instant mashed potatoes. And it's almost like every chef I've talked to has said that, I expected instant mashed potatoes. And literally it's just so funny because that's such a stigma that we have for this industry. And so obviously that was 20 years ago. You've been at it for a while now, but here in the last about 4 years ago, right? You started the Senior Dining Association. 5 years.
Actually, we're going on 5-year anniversary coming up in 2023. It'll be 5 years.
Nice. So what is the Senior Dining Association? For those listeners that it kind of sounds like it makes sense, but kind of explain what it is and what kind of the thought process was about creating it.
So what is the Senior Dining Association? It's a community. We developed a community where there was none before. The Senior Dining Association is the only association for food service, hospitality, and dining in the senior living industry. We offer resources, education, networking, and also live and virtual events. That's the Senior Dining Association. We also offer the awards program for senior living, dining, and hospitality also. And we also bring together people that haven't been brought together before. You know, that's what we are. We're the core of senior living, the hospitality and dining.
So I remember when we first connected, you had just started putting together the Senior Dining Association. You were in that kind of first few months. And we talked at length about why the Senior Dining Association. And I thought that your story of why you decided to do this and how it came about made so much sense. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about kind of the origin story of creating the Senior Dining Association because of what you saw the gaps in support for the industry was.
You know, during that time, when I was an operator, I was trying to find resources, education to help me and my team as a VP of Dining Services. Mm. Throughout my career, I worked for self-op, contract food service, and then went back to self-op. And when I worked for contract food service, it was very easy to find my people because we're all foodies. All our education was on food. We had the resources on food, but also lacked of connectivity. It also lacked, meeting new people in the industry as well. And having those resources is great, but when you go back to self-op and you don't have those resources, you don't have the education, you don't have a place to go to your peers and have conversations or a community to go to, well, that was a little rough. I would go to all these different conferences within senior living, within food service, and I just couldn't find the education. I couldn't find the actual real education on senior living, dining, and hospitality, what I was looking for. Yeah. And I went to one event and I saw a lot of people, and this was a food service event from another organization, and all the people in the room during this one track, this education track, the majority of the people from senior living. Also, those majority of the people were on their phones during the whole education track because they were listening to a commercial they didn't want to listen to. Yeah. And the one thing I vowed to is, if we're going to have education, we're going to have real education at our events. And that's what we do. We do real education. We don't do any type of commercials. We bring people together to talk about and learn about what they want to learn about at our events. And it could be virtual or at our conference, Synergy. Yeah. And that was the reason. That was the reason that when I saw that, it gave us the spark. It gave me the spark to talk to actually my partners, my industry partners. If it was Tyson, if it was a broker, whoever, the industry partners, they thought it was a great idea because they also needed help. It wasn't just the industry that needed help. Actually, our business partners, our industry partners need help to learn about our industry. They don't know. They want to learn. There's no educational resource for them. And that's part of the SDA. That's what we do. We also offer a class on Senior Dining 101, industry sales training. So they learn about our industry and also make products for our industry. And that's how it came about. It came about bringing people together.
Yeah, I can so relate to that because I remember our initial conversation and me being like literally telling the story of going to a conference, and it was a non-commercial multi-outlet conference. Not going to name the names, but they had a healthcare track. And so I went to the healthcare track. I signed up for all of it thinking, okay, great. I finally found something that's going to hit home. And I promise you, I learned more about hospitals and schools those 2 days at that conference than anything I was needed to know about senior living. And it was really deflating. And so when I heard you kind of tell that story about this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to tailor it, I was like, sign me up, I'm all in. So, um,
We talked a lot, and we talked a
yeah,
lot, and you were part of the board. You were very active. And obviously you went on your own here within the industry, but it brought everything together, until 2020 happened. But, we're still a baby and we still have a lot to grow, but we have a lot to do within our time.
yeah, I think it's interesting you bring up COVID, right? Because you had to shift gears on some of the things you were doing and how you were approaching the industry. You created some unique events and how you handled things. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about kind of how you were able to make that shift, but then also how that's carried over into what you guys are doing today with the SDA.
You know, it was interesting. So we launched the association in 2018, and our first start date was March 1st, 2018. And 2019, we had our first conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was wonderful. We blown out of the park, and we were gearing up for 2020. And then all of a sudden, COVID started happening. Granted, we're new. Remember, this is 5 years ago. Well, we only launched, we're only a couple of years into this, and we had to stop the whole conference. But what we did first when COVID stopped, when COVID started, what we did was, hey, let's get the education and the need out there first for the people that are working boots on the ground. And that's what we did. And then we were worried about, hey, now we'll reschedule the conference, we'll make it virtual. So yeah, we had to pivot, make it virtual. We had to do 2021 all virtual as well, and come up with virtual events, which was kind of hard. And then because we had people leaving, we had people coming, people were not engaged, people still, it was just crazy out there. And now
For sure.
you come back, and then we have the comeback conference, again in 2022 in Orlando, and it was amazing to get everybody back together again, and just to see everyone happy to be together again in 2022 at Synergy in Orlando. It was just amazing. But we learned a lot. We learned about how to do great virtual events, the software that we need to do virtual events and engage people. It was a good learning lesson for everyone these past 4 years. I've never done this before. I'm a chef.
Right.
I'll be honest, I've never done this before, but I see the vision, I see the need for the industry and how we can connect everybody. But that's where we're here to help.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here to do. And, we can't do everything in one shot. It's step by step. But I'll tell you, once we start walking up those steps, we're not stopping.
Yeah. Well, and you probably answered some of this question already, but I wanted to be specific about it because, kind of understanding the backstory of how the Senior Dining Association came about, the value you're creating with the association, what do you feel is that value different from maybe one of the other food service associations, or maybe like a general state senior living association? How does what the SDA does is different than that?
So right now, what we've always done from the beginning of the SDA is share our best practices from our members. And we develop our own original content, 3 articles every week. We have our member storyteller, Cheryl Savinsky, and she shares all of her best practices and stories from our members. And that's one thing that we do, because you know what? I've gotten so many emails from our members saying how much they love reading the articles, and they can relate to the articles, or they learn new things from the articles. And that's our start. Do we have other things in the pipeline to support the industry? Yes. Like an awareness program? Yes, we're going to be starting an awareness program for careers in senior living with our support system, the Senior Dining Careers, that website.
Yeah.
We're also going to be getting more resources. The goal is to bring up more resources and education online as well. Again, we're a small staff, and our staff is continuing to grow, but it's step by step, and we're going to get there.
Yeah. One of the things that you did somewhat recently, which it kind of came up because I recorded another podcast on this topic recently, was the SEA wellness and kind of looking at that component. I think it's something that we didn't really talk about as an industry or think about as an industry, but given the lumps and bumps we all took from 2020 till probably 6 or 8 months ago, there's definitely a need for that. And so, what was the driver behind that component? That's another huge piece of value that I think the association is bringing. And so, I'd love to learn a little bit more about the thinking behind that and how you're pushing that forward for the industry.
So SDA Wellness was thought of, to be honest, everybody needs wellness. Mental health is key right now. And we never really thought about it that much at work, right? We were always grinding and pushing and going, and stop to think of, hey, I might be having a bad day, but also my employees might be having a bad day, and why, right? But if they have these tips, just tips for wellness, right? How to get through a bad day, that was the whole purpose, is to give a little bit of self personal development within the professional development. It's very important that you see work-life balance is really not a balance, it's integration, but wellness is so important to your state of mind. The other thought process was, we actually have a licensed psychotherapist on staff, Maggie Fogel, and she's the one that writes all of our wellness tips. What's not better than having a licensed psychotherapist support our wellness program? The goal is to have it continually grow and grow the wellness, not just for mental health, but physical also, all these different senses of wellness.
Yeah. No, for me, when you started doing that, it just kind of was that additional sense of value. Like, how can we continue to support the industry? How can we bring maybe better and different conversations to the industry? How can we make the industry better as a whole? And I think that has been one of my biggest takeaways, is that senior living has kind of always been this afterthought, at least in my time in the industry, right? I would always have to explain to my friends or new colleagues, or go to those conferences I mentioned where, like, what do you do? Oh, I'm in senior living. Oh, so you manage nursing home food. Well, no, I'm not. I don't do that. Not even close. And so having a place that everybody can come together and really talk about all of those things, I think is really, really, really cool. So, one of the things I'm curious about is, I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit. I know you've in kind of general plans talked about it, but I'd love to kind of have some specifics about things you've got going on in the future, maybe over the course of the next few months or next year, that the listeners can be looking out for, or maybe connect with you guys and be a part of.
So what we have going on, and it's going to be in 2023, we're ramping up right now for 2023, and that was our goal. We have our Synergy Conference in April of 2023 in Houston, Texas. That's going to be an amazing event, April 16th to the 19th. If you go to sdasynergy.com, you'll be able to read up all upon it. And that's 3 days of networking, peer groups, education, expo floor with all of our industry partners, and just an amazing time. You've been there to all of our conferences, and you can speak to that. Oh, what we're also doing is, we're not just live, we're going to be virtual. So we're going to be actually launching next year the SDA Virtual Expo. We're going to have a spring and fall virtual expo. Our spring, June 6th through the 7th, and our fall will be in December 6th through the 7th. And that's a place, again, where you're going to be able to meet our industry partners, have some great education those 2 days, and just enjoy yourselves. Again, we have great software where it's interactive, and we have video booths, we have chat tables, everything that you can do at a conference, sort of, except for touching each other. You can have great conversations, as you know. And then what we're doing a lot with workforce development. We have a workforce and culture change symposium coming up in October, the 11th through the 13th, pardon me, in Las Vegas, Nevada, at Caesar's Palace.
Viva Las
And
Vegas.
Las Vegas, if we're going to do culture change, we're going to need to do it in Las Vegas.
Sure.
Because this venue, what we're doing here with Workforce is huge. We're not in competition just with all other senior living organizations. We're in competition now with the whole rest of the hospitality industry. And if people do not know about us, we do not know how to train, recruit, retain, or attract, then how great are we going to be, as an industry in whole? So part of it is we're going to bring all of our leaders together, not just dining, but CEOs and regionals and human resources, and bring everyone to the stage and talk about, how can we make it better? Bring in experts to support us and launch. So we have the whole year covered with events that we're working on for next year, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I will say this, I was at the first Synergy conference and I was at the most recent Synergy conference, which were the only two you've had because of COVID. And the really cool thing to me about those conferences is they are not your typical kind of fuddy-duddy conference. You get the education, you get the sessions, you do those things, and there's that added level of like hospitality. It's almost like going to the conference gives you ideas to take away in addition to all the great education and the roundtable chats that are done. And so, it's people still talk about, I still think about that very first like networking event where it was the circus theme that you did at first conference. And it was such a unique like experience because most of the time those networking events are come into the expo. We've got some appetizers. We've got some cocktails. You can go around. Maybe there's a singer or a performer or something like that. And it's fun and you get to meet people. But there was an extra level of like hospitality and like engagement with that. And so I think that makes the conference unique for the industry for sure.
My goal, the overarching goal for the conference, for all of our events, is we want to host you. You are our guests. We want you to be recharged, energized when you get back, bring back great ideas, which everyone does. Everyone loves that about our conference because, we have all these roundtables and discussions, and now we do our peer groups also, which is awesome. But it's having that fun time and, where you can unwind and get energized. That's the goal. That's what the goal should be. And coming with your teams also.
Yeah,
So,
one of the things that's a great point because one of the things I always hear from vendors, having moved to this side of the table, is that there always seems to be this, from a vendor standpoint, how can we better engage with the people at the conference, right? That event was open to all attendees. It didn't feel like we had to be in the expo and sell. Like I was able to connect with those industry partners as an operator in a much more comfortable, much more friendly and easygoing atmosphere than, oh, I've got my cocktail and appetizers. Now I got to go booth to booth and talk to people. So I think, that like being a guest at the conference and recharging and being energized, if you will, is amazing. So
and that's the goal, is to bring people together. That's what our goal is. And the one thing that we do well is bringing people together from the start of the conference to the end of the conference. And it's not just about the expo for industry partners, it's about the whole event. Our sponsorships for industry partners have full conference passes included with it. So they attend the full event. They get to, network during the event. They don't need to sell, but they get to that's where you start your relationships and learning.
right.
And then that's, the expo is where you see all the great products.
Yeah, no, it's a unique conference, and I'm so glad that you do it. So, um, surprisingly, Harris, we have come up on the time for the podcast, and so I would love for you to tell all of our listeners how can they reach out, how can they learn about SDA, how can they join, how can they get become members, all those good things. We're going to drop contact info in the show notes, but I'd love for you to share some of the best places for them to go to contact you and the SDA team.
If you go to seniordining.org, you can find our website. Also, sdasynergy.com is the conference website. Do not look at SDA. That would be the Seventh-day Adventists. That is not us. But anybody can reach out, email us, email me at harris@seniordining.org. I can reply, but come to our website, seniordining.org, and you'll find all the information there.
Perfect. Well, Harris, thanks so much for your time today. This is great. I'm glad we are able to, get the Senior Dining Association out there and talk about it and how unique and different it is and how good it is for our industry. So thank you for all you're doing on that front.
And thank you. Appreciate being here, Aaron.
All right.
Continue the great work.
Thank you. So there you have it, another one in the books. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. You can follow or direct message me on LinkedIn, where I'm always commenting and posting about food, hospitality, and leadership for the senior living industry. Or give me a follow on Twitter at AHFish or Instagram at AaronHFish. And check out my company, Trestle Hospitality Concepts, at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.